Your mother brought a Tim Hortons gift card to your retirement party. My daughter-in-law's laugh cut right through the crowd. That's adorable. My son said nothing. He just stood there, champagne in hand, and smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I picked up my coat from the chair, walked to the parking lot, and drove home in the November dark. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Hey, quick question before we go further. Have you ever given someone everything you had and watched them treat it like it was nothing? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Fair warning, some details here have been changed to protect privacy. But the lesson, that part is completely real. Now let me tell you what happened after that phone call. The snow had started early that year in Barrie. By the first week of November, the kind of cold that settles into your bones had already arrived. I remember because I'd worn my good wool coat to my son's retirement party, the navy one I'd bought at the bay 2 winters ago, saved for occasions like this. My son, Daniel, was retiring at 58 from the OPP, Ontario Provincial Police. 32 years of service. I was proud of him the way only a mother who raised him alone can be proud. I'd ironed his father's old badge the night before, wrapped it in tissue paper, and placed it in a small craft box tied with twine. Simple. The way I've always kept things. The party was held at the Barrie Country Club. Not my idea. My daughter-in-law, Renata, had insisted. She was always insisting on things that photographed well. The kind of woman who plans events the way other people plan business proposals. Every detail chosen for the impression it made. The venue, the flowers, the guest list. Especially the guest list. Renata's family took up an entire corner of the room. Her father owned 3 car dealerships in Simcoe County. Her brother was a real estate developer. They wore that money easily, casually, the way people do when they've never had to count anything. I arrived a little early to help set up. Renata looked at my craft box on the gift table and moved it to the end. Behind a bottle of scotch in a velvet bag and an envelope that was obviously thick with cash, she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Daniel worked the room. He was good at that, always had been. Firm handshakes. Easy laughter. The kind of man people trusted immediately. I watched him from across the room. This boy I'd raised on a housekeeper's salary in a 2-bedroom rental on Essa Road. And I felt that familiar ache of love mixed with something I couldn't quite name yet. When the gift opening moment came, someone handed Daniel my craft box. He unwrapped it carefully. The badge caught the light. For just a second, I saw it something real crossing his face. Then Renata leaned over, looked inside, and laughed. Your mother brought a Tim Hortons gift card to your retirement party. She held up the small card that had been tucked beneath the badge, the one I'd added because I thought he might like something small and practical. That's adorable. The laughter spread. Not cruel from everyone. Just the kind of easy, thoughtless laughter that happens when someone with influence decides something is funny. Renata's father chuckled. Her brother made a comment I couldn't hear but could read from his expression. Daniel looked at the badge again, and I waited. I waited for him to say something, to hold it up, to tell them what it meant. He set it down on the table and reached for the next gift. I picked up my coat. I said goodnight to no one in particular. I walked to my car in the snow, the heater taking 4 full minutes to kick in the way it always did. And I drove the 40 minutes home to my house on Penetanguishene Road without the radio on. I didn't cry. I'd learned a long time ago that tears were something I could only afford in private. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of red rose tea that went cold before I touched it. And I looked at the house around me, The way you sometimes look at something familiar and suddenly see it for the first time. The kitchen I'd renovated in 2018. The addition on the back that I'd commissioned in 2015. The property itself. 3 acres on the edge of Springwater Township. Assessed that year at just over $900. Ling, ling, ling. My son had never once asked how I owned this house. Not once in 30 years. I went to the bedroom closet and reached past the winter coats to the back shelf, where a fireproof box sat behind a stack of old Chatelaine magazines I'd kept since the 90s. The combination was Daniel's badge number, the one he'd been given his first day on the force, the one I'd memorized before he did, inside investment account statements from TD Wealth, a folder labeled Properties Current with 11 addresses listed inside, a separate folder for my numbered company. 284761, Ontario Inc. The one I'd incorporated in 2003. And at the bottom, a single sheet of paper with a number I had written by hand and updated every January. 4 yuan. 1 million. I hadn't started with money. I'd started in 1987 with a job cleaning rooms at a hotel in Collingwood, Ontario, and a $400 a month bachelor apartment, and a son who was 4 years old and had just learned to tie his own shoes. My husband had left when Daniel was 3. No support payments that ever arrived reliably. Just me, and whatever I could make, and whatever I could learn. The learning part turned out to matter more than anything else. By 1992, I'd moved from hotel housekeeping to private residential cleaning. I had 8 regular clients in the Barrie area, all of them upper-income households in Painswick and Holly. I cleaned their homes and I listened. Not to gossip, to information. The way they talked about their properties, their investments, which streets were being rezoned, which developments were coming. I started reading the Barrie Examiner and the Globe and Mail's report on business every single day. I opened a self-directed RRSP in 1993. I read everything the bank sent me. I asked questions at the branch until the advisors stopped being surprised when I came in. In 1996, I bought my first property, a duplex on Dunlop Street. Foreclosure. 87元. Ling ling ling. The bank was skeptical. A housekeeper with no cosigner, but I had 3 years of tax returns showing steady income, a credit score I'd protected like it was made of glass, and a down payment I'd saved dollar by dollar. They gave me the mortgage. I fixed both units myself over 2 weekends with my brother's help and a stack of library books on basic plumbing and drywall. I rented them to 2 families and used the income to pay down the mortgage faster than the schedule required. Then I did it again. Daniel grew up knowing I worked hard. He knew he didn't take vacations to Florida the way his classmates did. He knew our car was always 4 years old. What he didn't know, what I never told him, was why. I wanted him to learn the value of what things cost before he learned the value of what things were worth. I thought I was teaching him something. I was wrong about whether the lesson had landed. He'd met Renata 11 years ago at a fundraiser in Barrie. She was beautiful and confident and came from the kind of family that had a golf membership and a seasonal property in Muskoka. I watched my son change around her, not all at once, gradually. The way he started apologizing for things before she complained about them, the way the word mother started sounding different in his mouth. Flatter. More careful. I told myself it was just the adjustments couples make. The retirement party was just the moment I finally stopped telling myself that. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Thomas Whitfield had been my solicitor for 22 years. I'd found him through one of my cleaning clients in 1999, a retired judge in Innisfil who said Thomas was the only lawyer in the county who read every line of every document before signing. That was enough for me. Thomas. I need to review my estate documents, I said when he picked up. And I need to discuss some structural changes to the company holdings. He paused just half a second. Penelope, are you all right? I thought about the party. The laughter. The badge sitting on the table while Daniel reached for the next gift. I will be, I said. Can we meet this week? We met Thursday morning at his office on Dunlop Street, 2 blocks from that first duplex I'd bought in 1996. I brought my folder and sat across from him with a cup of coffee I didn't drink while he reviewed everything. You want to remove Daniel as sole beneficiary, he said finally. I want to restructure entirely, I said. The numbered company, the investment accounts, the properties. I want everything reviewed, updated, and protected. Thomas took off his glasses. You mentioned Renata. I mentioned the party. He was quiet for a moment. The way Thomas always went quiet when he was actually thinking, rather than just pausing. Then he said, there's also the matter of Daniel's business. I looked at him. What business? Thomas turned his computer screen toward me. He'd already pulled it up, the way he sometimes did when he had something to show you and wasn't sure how you'd take it. A numbered company registered the previous spring. Daniel Carruthers. Director. Renata Carruthers. Director. Business activity listed as property investment and development. My stomach went still. They've applied for financing on 2 lots in Springwater Township. Thomas said carefully. The applications list Daniel's anticipated inheritance as supporting collateral. I looked at the screen for a long moment. He used the inheritance he assumed he was getting, I said. Thomas nodded slowly. To back a real estate venture. Without speaking to me, I set my coffee cup down very carefully on the edge of his desk. I need a private investigator, I said. Someone thorough. Thomas opened his desk drawer without a word and handed me a card. Margaret Ozai. Former RCMP Financial Crimes. She's handled sensitive family matters for several of my clients. The card was cream-colored with clean black print. I put it in my wallet beside my debit card, which I had never once overdrawn in 32 years. I called Margaret that afternoon. Margaret Ozai didn't look like what people imagine when they picture an investigator. She was in her late 50s, tall and precisely dressed. The kind of woman who arrived exactly on time and never repeated herself. We met the following Tuesday at a Tim Hortons on Bayfield Street. I chose the location on purpose. I thought it was fitting. She'd been working for 5 days when we sat across from each other with our coffees. And she slid a folder across the table without preamble. The numbered company your son incorporated, she said, has been active for 7 months. They've secured pre-approval from 2 lenders based on projected inheritance. One lender required a statutory declaration from Daniel confirming the anticipated estate value. He signed a declaration. He did? I let that sit. The lots they're purchasing, Margaret continued, are in a development zone in Springwater Township that's expected to be rezoned for residential expansion in the next 18 to 24 months. It's a solid investment. Actually, if they had real capital behind it. They don't. They have debt, leveraged against money they haven't received and may not. I thought about the Tim Hortons gift card. The laughter. Is Renata the driver here? I asked. Or is it both of them? Margaret paused. That's the harder question. Daniel signed the declarations. He's legally involved. Whether the initiative was his or hers, the evidence leans toward a partnership rather than one person pulling the other. So he knew. He knew. I looked out the window at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into a minivan. A teenager was shoveling the sidewalk in front of the building next door. November and Barrie. Everyone just doing the work in front of them. Is there anything else? I asked. Margaret opened to the second section of the folder. There's a matter of the Muskoka property. I turned the page. Renata's family's seasonal cottage in Gravenhurst. I'd heard about it for 11 years. The dock, the boathouse, the place where Renata's family spent their summers, and where, according to Daniel, real estate in that area was always a good investment. Margaret tapped the page. The Muskoka property went into foreclosure proceedings 6 weeks ago. Renata's father defaulted on the line of credit he'd secured against it. I stared at her. The car dealerships, she said. 2 of the 3 have been operating at a loss for the past 18 months. A third is under review by the manufacturer for franchise termination. So the wealth was more leveraged than it appeared. Yes. And Renata is aware. According to financial records, her parents have been trying to consolidate privately since the spring. I closed the folder. Margaret, I said, I need you to document everything. Every declaration Daniel signed. Every lender communication. Every connection between the anticipated inheritance and the current borrowing position. She was already writing, and I need to understand my legal exposure. I said, what happens to their financing if my estate is restructured before they close on the Springwater lots? Margaret looked at me over her reading glasses. The financing collapses. She said simply. The collateral disappears. The lenders pull the pre-approvals. I nodded slowly. How long until they close? 60 days. She said. Maybe 75. I had my answer. My house on Penetanguishene Road had been used as a venue twice in 11 years, once for Daniel and Renata's engagement party, which I had organized and paid for, and once for a baby shower for Renata's sister that Renata had asked to hold here because the property photographed beautifully. Those were her exact words. It photographs beautifully. Margaret. I'd let it go at the time. I called my property manager, a man named Glenn Yates, who'd been overseeing my rental units for 12 years. The following morning, Glenn, I said, I need to talk to you about the Penetanguishene property. Sure, he said. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'd like to convert the accessory structure at the back into a supported independent living unit and list the main residence with a property trust. I've been in contact with the Simcoe County Housing Authority. There's a significant shortage of accessible housing for seniors in this area. There was a pause. Penelope, that house is your primary residence. I know what it is. I said, I also know what it could be. Glenn was quiet for a moment. This is related to the retirement party. Isn't it? I didn't answer that directly. I told him I'd send through the documentation from Thomas by the end of the week. He said he'd start looking at architectural requirements for the conversion. Before we hung up, he said, you know, my mother was a housekeeper. He said it quietly, like he wasn't sure if he should. I know, I said. You mentioned it once. Tell her hello from me. Daniel called 4 days after the party. I let it ring. He called again the next evening. I let that one ring too. On the 3rd day, he left a voicemail. Mom, I know you're probably upset about the party. Renata didn't mean anything by it. You know how she gets at events. She was stressed about the details. Can you call me back? I listened to it twice. The second week, he called 6 times. The voicemails shifted. The first ones were apologetic, then confused. By the 4th one, there was something new underneath the confusion. Something tight and urgent that I recognized from years of listening to people who were starting to understand they were in trouble. Mom, we need to talk. There are some things happening with some plans we've been working on. Some financial things. I just need to talk to you. I put the phone face down on the kitchen table and went to water my plants. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest about what I'd learned in 35 years of building something carefully, that the truth had to be seen clearly before it could be dealt with. If I called Daniel back and told him what I knew, he would minimize it. He would tell me I didn't understand the investment landscape. He would tell me Renata had handled the financial side, and he'd trusted her. He would find a reason why everything was fine, and why I should stop worrying, and why the party really hadn't been a big deal. I needed him to run out of reasons first. Thomas called me on a Wednesday afternoon in December. Penelope. The lender on the Springwater property reached out to our office this morning. They were trying to confirm estate details. I told them any inquiries about your estate needed to go through our firm directly, and that we were in the process of a full review. What did they say? They asked when the review would be complete. And what did you say? Thomas was in a doubt. Thomas paused with a particular quality that meant he'd enjoyed saying whatever he was about to tell me. I said I couldn't speculate on timelines, but that any previously assumed figures should be considered unverified until further notice. Good, I said. Penelope. Daniel is going to find out the financing is in question within the week. Probably sooner. I know. Are you prepared for that conversation? I've been preparing for it for 35 years. I said. It was Renata who called first, which told me something. She called on a Thursday morning at 9:15. I was cleaning my kitchen, which I still did myself because I'd always found it settling. And I looked at her name on the screen for a long moment before I answered, Margaret. Her voice was different than I'd ever heard it. Not the party voice. Not the careful social voice. Something underneath that. Something that might have been real. We need to meet with you. Something has come up with a property transaction we're working on, and we need some clarification on some details. What kind of details? I said. She paused. About your estate. About what Daniel has understood about what you've planned. I kept my voice level. I'd be happy to meet Taryn. Bring Daniel. Come to the house Sunday at 2:00. Sunday. She exhaled. Yes. Okay. We'll be there. I called Thomas after I hung up. Be available by phone Sunday afternoon. I said. And call Margaret. I want her to have the full file ready. He asked if I wanted him there. I thought about it. No. I said. Not yet. This part is between us. I spent Saturday making a pot of my mother's lentil soup and cleaning the house the way I used to clean other people's houses corner to corner. No shortcuts. I took the fireproof box out of the closet and set the folders on the kitchen table, not to show them immediately, just so they were present, the way the truth should be already in the room when the conversation starts. They arrived at 1:53. Which told me they'd been in the driveway waiting for the appropriate moment. Renata was wearing a good coat and the expression she always wore when she was performing composure. Daniel looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. I poured tea and set out a plate of digestive biscuits and let the silence sit for a moment before Daniel spoke. Mom. He wrapped both hands around his mug. I want to apologize for the party. I looked at him. Go on, Renata spoke. What Daniel means is the comment I made about the gift card. That was it, wasn't appropriate. I waited. Daniel looked at the table. We've been going through a lot of stress lately with this project we've been working on, and I think it spilled over, and you didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it. Tell me about the project. I said. Renata and Daniel exchanged a look. The kind that had a whole conversation in it. We've been working on a land acquisition, Renata said carefully. In Springwater Township. The rezoning timeline is strong, and we have pre-approval from 2 lenders. Based on what collateral? I said. Silence. I know what the statutory declarations say. I said, I know what collateral you listed. I know which lenders were contacted. I know the current status of your father's dealerships. Renata. And I know what happened with the Muskoka property. Renata's face went very still. Daniel set down his mug. Mom, how do you? Because I listened for 35 years, while everyone around me talked. I said, and because when something felt wrong, I asked the right questions. We were going to tell you. Renata said. We just when. I said. She didn't answer. I stood up and picked up the folder from the top of the stack. I set it in front of them. Daniel opened it. I watched his face as he read, the pre-approval documents, the statutory declarations with his signature, the lender correspondence, Margaret's notes on the timeline. He turned each page slowly, and by the third one, his hands had gone still. Mom? His voice came out smaller than I'd heard it in years. Mom, I thought you have the properties and the investments. And I thought, you assumed. I said quietly, you used an assumption to borrow against money you hadn't received. For a venture you hadn't discussed with me, I was going to tell you. You were going to benefit from it and tell me after. I said, that's different. Renata sat up straighter. The financing is legitimate. The land has real value. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were. You signed a declaration stating the anticipated value of an estate you have no legal knowledge of. I said, my lawyer has spoken with the lenders. That collateral is unverified and will remain unverified until I choose otherwise. Renata's voice changed. What does that mean? It means the financing doesn't close without my cooperation. The silence had a specific quality to it. The sound of something people had assumed was solid, turning out not to be. Daniel looked at me. Mum, are you saying you're going to let the deal fall through? I'm saying that for the first time in 35 years. You've asked me a direct question about what I have and what I plan to do with it. I folded my hands on the table. I think it's past time we had that conversation. I don't understand. Daniel said, I know. I looked at him carefully. This man I'd raised? This boy who had learned to tie his own shoes and become someone I was proud of, and somewhere along the way had stopped asking the questions that mattered. I've owned 11 properties in this county since 2007. The numbered company has held assets continuously since 2003. The TD Wealth accounts have been active since 1998. I built all of it myself. One property at a time. Starting with a duplex on Dunlop Street in 1996 with money I saved from cleaning houses. Daniel stared at me. The house you're sitting in, I said, is assessed at just over $900. Ling ling ling. The full portfolio across all structures is currently valued at approximately $4 million. Renata's hand went flat on the table. You're a housekeeper, she said. Her voice had a strange quality to it. Not cruel this time, just disoriented. I am. I've also been a landlord, an investor, and a numbered company director since before your father opened his second dealership. She looked at me for a long moment. Why? Daniel said. He wasn't asking about the money. I could hear that. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know who you'd become without the money shaping it. I said, I wanted you to choose your work, your character, your life. Because those things had value to you, not because you knew what was waiting. I wanted to see what you'd do. He was quiet for a long time. Then, and what did you find out? I found out that you became a good police officer. I found out you worked 32 years with integrity and you protected people and you earned that pension honestly. I'm proud of that. I looked at him steadily. I also found out that somewhere along the way, you started being ashamed of where you came from. That you married into a family whose approval you wanted more than you wanted to understand your own. And that you signed a legal declaration that used my name, my work, my 35 years. Without asking me. Daniel's jaw worked. The badge thing, he said it quietly. At the party? Your father's badge. I said, 32 years of service. I kept it because I thought it would mean something to you. He put his face in his hands. Renata sat very still. She had the expression of someone recalculating a problem they thought they'd already solved. What happens now? She said. Her voice had dropped the performance completely. It was just a question. I picked up the next folder in the stack and set it in front of her. This property on Penetanguishene Road is being transferred to a housing trust I'm establishing with Simcoe County. The accessory structure is being converted to an accessible unit for senior residents on fixed income. I'm donating the land and working with the housing authority on a small development model. Teachers, nurses, people who've been on the Simcoe County waiting list, you're giving away your house. Renata said. I'm doing something useful with it. But where will you? I have 10 other properties. I said. I'll be fine. Daniel raised his head. Mom. The deal. The Springwater lots. What I looked at my son. That depends entirely on you. He waited. Not on the money. I said. Not on what I decide to do with the estate. On you? On whether you can tell me honestly. Looking at what you know now. Looking at what you signed. Why you thought that was acceptable. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was careful and lower than usual. I think I stopped believing that what you built had real value. I think I watched Renata's family and I started thinking that what we had wasn't the right kind. And I told myself you'd want us to use it. That you'd understand. And your father's badge. He closed his eyes. I needed you to say something. I said, not for me. For yourself. You knew what that badge was. And you let it sit on the table. I know. We sat in silence for a while. The soup was still warm on the stove. Outside the kitchen window, the snow had started again. The steady Ontario kind that doesn't stop to announce itself. Can I see it? Daniel said finally. The badge. I got up and went to the bedroom and brought back the craft box with the tissue paper still half folded around it. I set it in front of him and he opened it slowly. He held the badge in both hands and looked at it for a long time without speaking. He was your grandfather's, he said quietly. Your great-grandfather's first, and your grandfather's. And I kept it because I wanted you to understand that work with dignity is something worth inheriting. He set it down gently on the table. Renata was watching him. I watched her watch him, and in that moment I saw something I hadn't expected. Not calculation. Something more uncertain than that. Something that looked like a woman realizing that the story she'd told herself about her own family's foundation had some cracks in it too. I'm sorry, she said. She was looking at Daniel, not at me. And I don't think she meant it as a performance. I think she meant Daniel specifically. But the words landed in the room generally, and I let them. I didn't respond to it directly. I picked up my tea, which had gone cold, and held it with both hands. The spring water deal. I said, if you want to move forward with it, I'll meet with Thomas next week, and we'll discuss what legitimate involvement from me might look like. Not as a silent collateral source. As an actual partner, on terms we agree to openly, with documentation that's honest about what it is. Renata sat up. That means I see the full financials. I said, it means decisions are made with me in the room. And it means you come back here in 3 weeks and tell me what you've decided you actually want to build. Not what you want to own. Daniel nodded. 3 weeks. Renata said. She sounded steadier. Yes, and one more thing. I looked at both of them. The housing project on this property, I'd like your help. Not financial. Physical. There's a planning meeting with the County Housing Authority in January. I want you both there. Renata looked startled. You want us at a housing meeting. I want you to understand where the money goes and why. That's not optional. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded once. Okay. They left as the snow was really coming down. I stood at the kitchen window and watched Daniel's taillights disappear down Penetanguishene Road. Then I washed the mugs and put the biscuits away and sat down at my kitchen table with the folders and the fireproof box and the badge in its craft box. And I let the house be quiet around me. My phone rang. Thomas. How did it go? He said. I think it went honestly. I said, which is the most I could ask for. And the trust documents, have them ready for January. The County Housing Authority meeting is the 14th 3 and crude ass DM. I'll need everything structured before then. Done. He paused. Penelope. For what it's worth, what you're doing with that property. My mother would have gotten off a waiting list like that in 1978 if it had existed. I know. Thomas. I said. That's the point. I hung up and sat there for a while longer. In January, the Housing Authority meeting was held at the county offices on Dunlop Street. 14 people around a table. 2 county councilors. The Housing Authority director. 3 architects. A representative from the Simcoe Supportive Living Network. And 4 community members from the waiting list. Daniel and Renata were both there. Daniel in his good wool sweater, Renata with her notebook, asking questions about accessible design specifications that surprised the architect sitting next to her. I watched her take 3 pages of notes, and I didn't say anything about it. The project was approved in principle, 7 units in the converted main house, 6 in the new accessory structure. Priority placement for applicants in essential services who had been on the waiting list for more than 2 years. The director of the Housing Authority, a woman named Claire Baptiste, shook my hand at the end of the meeting and said, Mrs. Carruthers, we've been trying to make something like this work for 8 years. Thank you. I thanked her back and meant it. Outside in the parking lot afterward, Daniel walked beside me to my car. The snow had been cleared, but the cold was sharp. The kind of January that means it. He said. I looked up the duplex on Dunlop Street. The original one. The one from '96. I kept walking. A family has been in the upper unit for 14 years. He said. The lower unit just had their 3rd child. Yes. I said. He was quiet for a moment. Did you ever tell them that you're the owner? I'm a numbered company. I said. They know it as 2847691, Ontario Inc. But you know them. I know all my tenants. I said. That's the job. He held my car door open while I got in. Before he closed it, he said, Mom, I want to understand it. All of it. How you built it. How it works. What you were thinking. I want to understand. I looked at my son. This man, who was 63 years old and starting a question he should have asked 30 years ago and was asking it now, which was when he was ready to hear the answer. Come for dinner Sunday. I said. Bring Renata. I'll make soup and I'll show you the folders. He nodded. His face looked the way it had when he was a boy and had just figured out something that had been confusing him. Not proud yet. Just clear. The badge. I said before he closed the door, I'd like you to have it now. He looked at me. You earned it honestly. I said. It belongs with you." He took the craft box from the back seat where I'd brought it. He held it in both hands for a moment in the parking lot with the January cold coming off the snow, and then he said thank you, Mom, in a voice that sounded like he meant both words separately, and together, I drove home on the road I'd driven for 30 years. Past the duplex on Dunlop. Past the 4-unit on Kozlov. Past the converted commercial property on Bayfield that housed 2 nonprofits I'd never told anyone I owned. The city looked the same as it always had. Ordinary. Working. Quietly full of people doing the thing in front of them. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that stayed warm this time, and the folders spread around me, and the fireproof box open on the chair beside me. I thought about a woman in 1987 cleaning hotel rooms in Collingwood with a 4-year-old at home and $40 left until payday, and a library card she used 3 times a week because books were free. I had not built this out of rage. I had not built it out of ambition. Not exactly. I had built it out of the particular attention that comes from knowing nothing will be given to you. So you had better learn to see what's available. That's still the lesson. It was never the money. The money is just what happens when you refuse to look away. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Have you ever worked in a job that people looked through you to get to someone else? Have you ever given someone something real and watched them reach past it? Leave me a comment. I read them. And if you know someone who needs to hear that the work they're doing matters, that what they're building quietly has value, even when no one's watching, share this with them. Subscribe to Rare Revenge for more stories like this one. Real people. Hard choices. And the kind of quiet strength that doesn't always make the news but shapes everything around it. Thank you for staying with me to the end. It means more than I can say. God bless you. And remember, it was never just spare change.